Welcome to the Bank Marketing Show, the podcast that engages and informs you for success in today's marketplace. It's the show that will make you a better marketer with trends, tactics, and inspiration from experts and industry leaders. If you're wanting to impact your personal success and position your bank as the best choice in your market, you're in the right place. Now let's dive into today's show with your hosts, Chris and Dan.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Bank Marketing Show. We're really glad to have you with us today. Excited about a great visit that Dan and I have in store for you that we think is going to be really informative and helpful. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
Doing all right.
Good.
Yeah, I think this topic is, on the surface, it's like, it sounds really boring. So warning everybody with that, but we're talking about it because it's drives a lot of value and it's something we see everywhere. Like the first conversation I have with any bank is, you can see sort of the tendrils of this, having an impact. So I'm excited to kind of break it down a bit and get you all thinking about the structure of your teams and kind of how that has an impact on stuff.
Yep. And marketing teams and systems, this is something that is applicable to everybody, regardless of your bank size. Also, it's something really important. In fact, Dan, it was kind of funny. You and I had a little bit of trouble scheduling time for this episode because 'tis the season for conferences, right? And you and I are. You were out a couple of weeks ago, and I was out last week, and then I think I'm going next week, and then you're going the next one, and this is the season that all the cores and the state banking associations and all the bigs are having their conferences, and this set of subjects and things around what we're going to talk about today seem to be very consistent conversations that you and I are having with bank leadership. Right? That was kind of where this came from.
Yeah. Well, and just over the years, like either first conversation like at a conference or, first meeting, right? Usually just the systems come up. Like why, I like to ask the question, hey, if this is a problem that you're facing, what have you done to try to solve it so far? Or why is it becoming a problem now? Right. And so if it's around marketing, it's like, hey, we want to run some Google ads. Well, great. Well, like, have you tried them before? Why now? Why are you trying to run them now? What has changed? That makes it a requirement. And what we try to do, is say, look, I'm not just going to turn on Google Ads just for the sake of doing so. We want to make sure they're going to be successful. So I want to understand, we're going to need to understand your bank's differentiators and how you think about that. We're going to need to understand like the customer experience once they click on an ad and go through. And so it sort of touches, it's not just as simple as running Google Ads. I was joking with a colleague of mine yesterday. We were just lamenting about all the spam email we get. And I'm like, as somebody with like a CEO in their title on LinkedIn, I get just endless spam. That's, lots of emails that are like, oh, I can 10x your leads. And, he was joking that my thought on the 10x the leads is like, well, like they're not going to be great leads. My colleague's thought was, we can't handle that. We can't handle that volume. Maybe if you 1.5x them, that's good. But, so, it's around the structure, or it's around the systems that you have in place. If I can send you 10,000 customers tomorrow, do you actually want them? Like it sounds good on the surface, but it probably means they're lower quality. And it probably means that like, could you actually go open 10,000 accounts in a day? Could you underwrite 10,000 loans in the next week or two? Like probably not. And so like it's this theme of marketing needs to be tied to the operations around the bank and understand what happens once they click on that ad, once they get to the website. Because if the experience falls apart, you could have the best ad, the best copywriting, but if that experience falls apart, they're not going to convert.
So it's about having marketing. Yeah, it is. It's about having functional systems that are prepared to do that are poised to do the marketing and do it well. Whether you've got an outsourced partner like us as an agency, or whether you're doing it all internally, is kind of sort of not the point. It's really, are the systems functional and in place? And I like what you're saying too. Or are they targeted? Because would you rather bring in 5 new highly qualified ones or 25 of the, ones
like
that you've got to
any bank
filter
would,
through and they aren't qualified and they're not good margin customers and all of that. So
yeah, like any bank would rather bring in, $1 million commercial loan than, $20,000-$50,000 loans. It's just a lot less work.
absolutely.
You still want the $20,000-$50,000 loans, but expand that out to a bunch of $5,000 loans. Like that's a lot more. That's a lot more underwriting, a lot more work in general, and then a lot more management and risk of the loans over time. So, do you want to think, and that, it just plays back to the strategy, like the marketing strategy of what kind of leads do you want to drive? And we talk a lot here about the more specific problems you can solve, the more excited people will get about them. And so you kind of got to balance this of like, great, you want to drive $1 million commercial loans. Like, what's the problem you're solving, and how do we talk about it? And you need that, you need some conversations with the loan team, and you need the strategy written, and you need that system planned for going out and getting those folks. Because if you're winging it, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And, you're going to be bouncing all over the place and trying different things.
Well, it's like if somebody bumps into you at the elevator at one of these conferences and you start a conversation and you as a banker that are listening to this, are asked, well, describe your marketing system for me. And you're supposed to give that elevator speech of, okay, well, this is our functional system of how we do marketing from leads all the way to onboarding a new customer and everything in between, whether you're talking about deposit accounts or loan side or whatever the case may be. So, as you're doing that, are you able to rattle that off? Do you have a deliberately planned system that, you have a what we call an SOP, a standard operating process for exactly how you're going about that? And regardless of the marketing platform and all of that, is it the same functional system or is it not? And too often it's not. At one of the conferences I was at last week, Dan, I was talking to and visiting with one of our clients, and she's an extremely sharp, very Southern lady, and she knows that they are challenged in the other direction, that they are far more dysfunctional than she would like for their systems and processes to be, which is part of why we're beginning to partner with them and take them in new directions. And her favorite quote is, "Yeah, we bring crazy up onto the porch and give them sweet tea."
Yeah.
So and she knows that so sometimes compliance steps in where they're not supposed to be, or sometimes this person decides to put on a marketing hat for the day, and then every now and then a board member will throw in that they think that an ad should be here or do this, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here. So, Dan, as we're talking about functional systems, sometimes the easiest way to define that is what is dysfunctional. And what I just described is it is not, and it's frustrating, it's inefficient, it's all of these things that are not the best ways for us or for a bank to be operating in. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard too many times, hey, I had this agency or this, that would just come to us once a month and say, what do you want to do? And, so they had this standing meeting and just nobody would be thinking about the marketing for the month until they got on the call. And, so there's no overarching plan. There's no discussions around what to do when certain things happen, when you get bad leads in or, any of that. And then it's just kind of a bunch of winging it. Oh, well, let's fill in this whole, let's turn out a blog post this month. And then it becomes like, well, you got ChatGPT to write it. And then it's just not a good quality thing and it doesn't add value.
Or we run ads on this platform. Well, why do you? Well, because we've always done it that way.
Yeah.
We hear that one a lot.
Well, we need, I hear right. The corollary to that is like, well, we need deposits. Let's run some ads, and expect the ads to just, or the deposits rather to just flow in, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Well, so Dan, you and I were talking about it before the episode today. So the opposite of that is to begin with goals and KPIs.
Yeah.
Right. is to be very clear about, okay, before we even set up the processes and define those, what's the outcome? What does a touchdown look like? Right?
Yeah. It's one of the seven steps from highly successful people.
Yeah.
From that book. Like, begin with the end in mind, right?
Exactly.
It's same thing here. Goal, but don't just say we want deposits. It's like, how many deposits can marketing bring? What is the system? What does the flow look like to do that? Who are the deposits from? How are we getting in front of them? What are we saying when we get there? And what do we think we can realistically drive? And how do we know we're successful? Right? If we get a month in and it's not working, how do we know whether to turn it off or to try something different and keep going? So thinking through those scenarios, a lot of banks just will stop at that point of like, great, we'll run ads. Okay, great, run ads. And then nobody's really thinking about it. And the reason, that I'm not like trying to insult all of you banks listening, right? It's because you're busy and you've got 100 other things on your plate, and you got sponsors knocking at sponsorship opportunities knocking at the door. You've got events to plan, local parades, like all that stuff. And so like digital sometimes becomes an afterthought in the absence of an overarching plan. But if you've got a plan that includes local, digital, brand, those types of things, you'll see what your activities are and what the goals of each thing are, and you'll have something to come back to. And so then when you have those monthly meetings, right, you pull up that plan and say, well, what are we doing in digital this month? What are we doing in, for our brand and our local stuff this month?
It makes complete sense that once the destination is clarified, then we can fold the map out on the table and draw the tracks as to how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Through various means, through various platforms. It is our website, or is a landing page poised and ready for doing this with a digital ad campaign, that is, again, going to provide that pathway to the destination that we want a client to get to, or is our SEO speaking to, these things that are going to drive more traffic that way, or
right.
Even if we're doing a direct mail piece, or, regardless of what it is, but we've got all these different tentacles that are pathways to get to the same destination, and it makes us intentional in those.
Yeah, versus a strategy that's just go west and find gold.
Yeah, there you go.
And then you could end up in any different place.
Yeah. And then bank leadership looks at marketing and goes, well, why didn't that work? And marketing is looking at it and going, well, we ran some Google ads. Why didn't that work? And you know what I'm saying? And nobody's really connecting the dots as to how that pre-planned system could have done the whole thing better. And that's got to start with marrying up with the bank's overall strategic plan, then annualizing it, and then narrowing it down to, what are we going to do today from a time standpoint, a spend standpoint, all of those things. And then starting to get into this, and Dan, I know you actually gave a conference presentation on this not too long ago, is starting to look at the internal team. And,
well, I was going to say,
that's those seats. So forget Susan and Bob and, forget who those personalities are for a minute, and looking at it from a defining the seats of who needs to do what to make the forward-moving pathways on that map happen.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it there's the map, and then there's the team to get there. It's like naming your team at the beginning of like a game of Oregon Trail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dating myself, but like, you want to pick the right skills to pull in, and just making sure somebody's got responsibility for the different parts of the plan. If you just writing the plan and having the functional system isn't enough, you've got to like assign the people to it. Especially most banks that we work with that are have small teams and are oversubscribed, or have a marketing team, but also has, if you're bigger, the problems don't go away. Then maybe you have a marketing team, but you've also got retail and loan teams that are also kind of doing some marketing functions or cross-selling, and loan teams are out prospecting, and there's coordination that needs to be done. And by working together with them, you can help support their sales goals. They can help you support your marketing goals, and everybody can be happier. So it's really defining the seats more so than the people. Somebody needs to take ownership of certain things. I like to say, like, at the presentation I gave a few weeks ago, I said, I don't care if you're a 1-person marketing team or a 0-person marketing team, if you're just an HR or compliance person that happens to be doing some marketing, or if you're a 20-person marketing team, like every bank needs to have somebody in the CMO seat. Your title might not be CMO, but there needs to be somebody that's sort of taking that role of the chief marketing kind of decision maker. And that doesn't mean that your CEO or president doesn't have a say in it. It doesn't mean you're not asking for help and advice and input from other teams, but it means like the buck stops here. Like somebody has to own that and be responsible to go around to all the teams and get input and get feedback and refine the plan and refine the marketing copy. But somebody needs to take ownership, right? It can be a brand new hire fresh out of college that doesn't have a lot of experience. I'm not talking about experience. I'm just talking about that ownership and somebody with that
moving
attitude,
the system along, right?
Move the system along, or to recognize, hey, we need to make a decision here. Great. Well, maybe I'm not equipped to make this decision, but I am in the seat of taking ownership of it. So I need to go out and collect information or get a committee together to make the decision. Ownership of that system, of that plan, to make sure it get, not to do it all yourself, but to make sure it gets done.
And in so many of my conversations with CEOs and bank leadership as well, Dan, self-admittingly, so many of them both realize but have a hard time with the next but crucial part of that too, which is empowering that person, that doer, the we call it the tip of the spear. So who's the tip of the spear for marketing, for the bank, whether that's for parts of the plan or for the entire plan or whatever the case may be. But the key stakeholders at the bank also need to empower that set of people or person so that, again, it's moving forward without getting bogged down in the wheel of too many people involved in trying to make a decision or
I think too,
rebutting a decision that's been made or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think there's an element of it can be hard to delegate some of those things, and it can be hard to have somebody that feels empowered. There could be other leaders at the bank that want to have the say in everything that goes out, right? Compliance, for example, needs to review stuff. So but I think that gets back to the system piece of you can empower somebody while still requiring compliance or leadership reviews of things, right? Define it by defining it in your system. I think it makes it easy to empower people. Say, look, you own this. That doesn't mean you don't have to get it reviewed, but you own it. Run with it. Make sure it happens, and work the system, work the plan as you do that.
Yeah, but all of those participants also know and understand clearly where they fit on that wheel, so that they're not stepping out of line. So that kind of like I described, earlier, that you don't have somebody in leadership or a board member deciding that they want to, run some ad because they have a friend down at the, at the radio station or whatever the case may be. And it's not, nobody is stepping out of line in that wheel, that it's still a seamless system and doing what you're talking about, where everybody understands their responsibility and at what point are they touching processes, but they don't get out of the way in that. And there's ownership.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm reminded of a quote or something I read a long time ago about how they manage decision making at Apple and big tech companies, and the delineation was, as a manager, you need to kind of contribute, but like what change, as you go up, like at the VP level, the excuses no longer matter, right? If something didn't happen, it doesn't matter why, right? You're responsible and it falls on your shoulders at that level. And that's a much different organization, huge, and in tech, not in banking, but like, I think some of that, I'm thinking about some of that here of like, maybe people's jobs aren't on the line in the same way as like a VP at Apple would be, but like it's at some point, if something doesn't happen, somebody needs to be responsible. It doesn't mean the hammer needs to fall. It just means that like somebody's taking ownership of that so that it doesn't happen again, or that
there you go,
fix the problems for the next quarter. I think we both use this entrepreneurial operating system format. I'm sure we've talked about it on the show before from this book called Traction that, really encourages us to pick those 3 or 4 things we really need to get done each quarter, and then make a quarterly plan, and then at the end of the quarter we can review what those 3 or 4 things are. Did we get them done? If not, why? What needs to happen next quarter to get them done, or increase the chance of our success on the next things we're doing? And then there's like a parking lot area for shiny objects that come up in the quarter that we can put them on so we don't lose focus. And so somebody just needs to be like managing that process and watching it. And if something doesn't happen for some reason, somebody needs to understand why and move on. So if the Google ads don't work, why? Right? And like I said a few minutes ago, do we stop Google ads or do we try a different approach to them? And I just see it at a lot of banks I work with. Before we get there, there's not that. It's, hey, go try Google ads. Let's see if they work. But it's not that simple.
Yeah, and I think the overarching constant there also is that in the EOS system that you described, even those key quarterly happenings, those key quarterly steps are all tied to the grander vision. And when we put those down in advance, that's part of that is our checkpoint. Yeah. And if any one of those is, but really the overall strategy for the bank this year is to get from here to here, and whatever it is. And it's increasing deposits, or it's doing this, or, growing in new market areas, or whatever those key vision points are. And that all of those steps tie back to that same vision. Because so much of the time, that's what we see in marketing is try this, try this, try this. And it's like, hey, is it really tied to the grander vision or not? And again, those pathways down the map should all be headed ultimately to that same destination. And if they do that, then again, that avoids so much of the dysfunctionality and keeps us on plan and on point with the functions of how things are going to happen. And, it takes deliberateness, Dan, and it takes sometimes a time out to make these things happen and say, we're not going to just keep running in the mud and inviting crazy onto the porch and living in this dysfunctionality. We're going to actually determine functional systems and put them in place. And that's, I think, really the bottom line of what we were trying to get across today.
Yeah.
So I think having these common discussions at conferences that you and I are going to, sometimes in completely different parts of the country, and realizing, hey man, we're having this exact same discussion with banks that are all over the place geographically, but it matters not. Same pain points, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just so many common themes, and it's part of it's like the organizational struggle is you're trying to do more with fewer people.
Yeah.
Part of it's just the nature of banking is like, bankers are not marketers, and so there's always a bit of coordination and translating those goals to something marketing can help with, and reporting back ROI is difficult, and it can be tough for some bankers to kind of understand how clicks and impressions, convert into actual deposits. And so it's got to be somebody's job in the marketing team to help make that link if you want to maintain your budgets. But yeah, similar stuff across country.
Yeah. Well, Dan, the cool thing here on the show is we're in our third year, and we have built up, I think, answers and resources to so many different things. And I didn't want to not mention for all of our listeners today, they're going, well, that sounds great, and we want to get more functional systems, but how do we do this part? How do we do this part? And one of the cool offerings and free tools that you and I have is now on the website. And I love this and I'm loving seeing some activity on it. So folks can just go to bankmarketingshow.com and there's a little box that pops up on there and it says, ask me anything. So go in there and ask about strategic planning or ask about, teams, or ask about, digital tools, or anything that you want to ask about related to marketing. And it's going to pull from our entire library of guests on the show and resources that they have offered. We have offered solutions to a lot of these things. So there's a tool right there on the bankmarketingshow.com website for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we love your feedback too. It's not a tool we've built. It's a partner company I've been working with for a while, and they do some really cool stuff. But if you ask it something that gives you a weird answer, let us know. But it's pretty cool because it's just everything we've talked about in the 40 or 50 hours of recordings we've done over that time, and it's really powerful to see it it work. I'd also like to offer, if anyone wants it, this presentation I gave to the Missouri Bankers Association on efficient marketing team structure. Reach out, contact at bankmarketingshow.com. Happy to send along the deck.
Dan, that's what you and I are doing here, man, is helping people get to where they want to go and have some of the answers that they need and providing resources to them. So I would encourage folks to take you up on that offer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Well, and looking ahead at our coming episodes, Dan, I know we've got some other State Banking Association leadership coming on and some really cool things going into kind of our next season here as well. So looking forward to some of those upcoming guests and topics as well with you, Dan.
Likewise. We should have an exciting summer of episodes.
There you go. And from this one, everybody's going to go out there and make their systems far more functional, correct?
I hope.
I hope so too.
We'll check back in. We'll check back in a few months and keep you accountable. We'll take ownership of that.
There you go. Love it. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show if you have not. Please share this or some of your other favorite and most useful episodes, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for joining us. To go deeper or get access to some of the valuable nuggets from today's show, go to bankmarketingshow.com. There you'll find episodes, links to resources, and much more. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And join us next time.